All right, hey everyone, welcome back. This is episode 28 of the Tough Lift podcast. My name is Matt Adamczyk. I'm the host, the owner of 4-Star Strength in Livonia, Michigan, and right up the road in Novi, Michigan, based out of MECA, is the owner and a good friend of mine, David Lawrence. He's going to introduce himself in a second. Dave is actually in Chicago right now. We've been trying to do this podcast for a hot second. The last time he got stuck in the world's worst traffic jam, I guess we could say it was. And he was actually willing to take it from his car, and I made the call to not do that. My wife would be so proud of me, by the way, because I would have taken the call.
It was a parking lot. It wasn't a highway.
It's fair. So, Dave, we've known each other in the space for a while now. We've worked on and off again with athletes. I've come over there with my coaching staff multiple times, worked with your guys' coaching staff, just to continue to develop each other across the board. And I don't want to rain on your parade too much and talking about what you guys do, but it's been really great being able to work with you and your facility and your team over there for what we do over here on our Olympic side. And I really wanted to get you on the podcast to be able to talk about how you guys use a lot of what most people refer to as GPP and training for sports specificity on the strength and conditioning side as a business outside of like the locker room area and beyond the college strength and conditioning room to continue to get athletes and high performance athletes. And again, I'll let you flex on who you work with and working with them outside of that realm. But you also work with normal run of the day, moms, dads, normal kid in high school, stuff like that. So if you could first, let's do an intro, Dave. Who are you? How'd you get into the world of strength and conditioning? Did you play sports? What's your business? Give us the runaround, man.
Yeah, Matt, thanks so much for having me on the podcast. It's we've been friends for a while, and so it's really cool. Absolutely love working with you because like when you've come over to our facilities to educate our coaches, we've gotten a lot better. And that's the thing is like you don't live in a silo. And something that like we do a lot of GPP work, and I'll explain why that is a little bit later. But there's everybody has different tools that they're experts in or they do a better job in. And so like when you educate us, it just adds to the tool belt or the arsenal. And then we're able to be better coaches, deliver better results for our clients. So always grateful. We've learned a ton from you, and you've been like, you're a very generous person with your time and your information, and it's like super cool to work with you. And that's like one of my favorite things is people always ask me like, who's the competition in your area or who are you competing against? And I always say, I have enough mistakes that I'm trying to make right now to worry about anybody else. I got enough problems myself.
Yeah, I like that. I
don't even like worry because if we can just clean up basic stuff in our business, if I can clean up basic stuff in my personal life that affects our business will be much better. And so I love collaborating with people. I think and like because you learn from everybody, and that's like one of the coolest things, my favorite things about being a strength coach and in this profession is getting to learn from just awesome people who have different experiences, different perspective, different education, different athletes they've worked with. And I think one of the things that we all forget is really like our real education comes from the athletes and clientele that we work with and solving problems for them. And so like you have a whole set of problems you've solved for a certain particular population that I haven't. So I get to learn from you and your perspective. So that's really cool. So I'm a strength coach. I've been a strength coach for my whole adult life. So about 15 years getting paid for it, which is really cool. It's the only real job I've had. I don't think I'll do anything else for money. I don't think I can do anything else.
No, we're addicted to being underpaid and working hard.
Yeah. I love it. It's super great. I don't think I'll do anything else for money. It's really cool. So we our business, Michigan Elite Conditioning for Athletes. We've got about 50 staff, most of them strength coaches, and some support staff and things like that. And we basically focus on one-on-one personal training. That's all we do is one-on-one. And I've personally trained athletes in over 30 sports, and professional or Olympic athletes in probably around 10 to 11 different sports. So at a pretty high level. So yeah, I absolutely love it. That's kind of my background. I've been a head college university strength and conditioning coach. I've been a national team strength coach. I've consulted for teams in the NFL to university. But I really love being in the gym. To be honest with you, it's probably my favorite thing, and getting to work.
He's being super humble right now. It's very entertaining. He's being very
well,
humble
I mean,
right now.
No, it's my
He's got
favorite.
a lot of cool shit, man. So
Yeah, no, I mean, it's really like I'm a bit boring myself. It's not. I get a lot more enjoyment talking about like the people we work with and helping athletes. Really, what I wanted to be was a professional athlete, and I wasn't good enough to do it. So I like helping athletes just reach their potential. And my favorite type of athlete to work with is like probably I don't work with a lot of them, but my like high school kids. Those are my favorite athletes that are very motivated. Not your average kid, but very motivated high school kids. Probably my favorite athletes to work with. So yeah, that's me.
they're so dialed in, man. It's wild.
Yeah.
Like the intensity's there.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can just really drive them really hard, and the results are really cool. And they have so many bad habits that you can clean up, and they become healthier, more confident. It's really cool to see. So,
yeah. High school athletes, I always refer to them. They're like the clay, dude. They're like the clay in that high school years, like from freshman to senior. You really can see like the mold of just the goopy clay ball turn into something that looks like art at the end. It's pretty cool. Because everything's just like raw at that point. So the bad habits really get beaten out, and you watch a video, and call it what it is. It's like watching a baby giraffe running. At the end, you're like, oh wow, this kid's like D1. This kid's going to D1. This kid couldn't even do a hurdle.
Yeah.
So it's always fun.
I've had like multiple like hockey players get drafted into the NHL. Some of them like very high, and they don't have a 20-inch vertical jump.
Yeah.
They can't jump. Like one of my favorite things is like they can't jump over a flat credit card.
Wow.
But they can put the puck in the net, so that's what gets them paid.
Yeah, I have some athletes that are like that at the gym, ironically, in weightlifting, and I'm just like, this is an issue. You know that, right? They're like, I don't want to talk about it. I'm like, I do, though, because it's super important in our sport.
Yeah.
And then your background, your education, Dave.
I went to Central Michigan University. Got a degree in physical education and health. I actually wanted to be a teacher, but I could not pass Math 105. Failed math, basic algebra 4 times. And so they're like, well, he can't become a teacher or give him a teaching degree. So we'll just give him the degree and get him out of here. So that's basically what they do. So my path was pushed right into being a personal trainer, strength coach. So yeah, that was it.
Okay, so not too many sets of 20s being handed out by you, I assume.
No. It's a lot of counting.
And then training wise, what's your background? Any mentors or anything like that notable?
Yeah. So my first job out of college, I worked at a place called the Poliquin Performance Center in Chicago for a strength coach named Charles Poliquin. Everybody like old school would know who that is. Some of the younger.
Just a pause. I baited you into that because I think a lot of people don't know in the Olympic weightlifting world, and like you just said, kind of old school. But I know even my own staff, like the newer one, like a lot of them don't know that name. Mm-hmm. And probably a lot of people listening to this podcast won't know that name just because the generations have passed. But continue on talking about that OG.
No, yeah, for sure. So Charles Poliquin, he passed away about 2018, so about 6 years ago now. It's crazy. It's been that long. He was my biggest mentor. Basically, not everything, but a lot of what we use really was directly from him. So Charles was kind of titled the most successful strength coach in the world. And he had trained over 700 Olympians in 20 some different sports. He trained over 70 medal winners. across those 20 different sports. He trained, I think it was, I'm going to get it wrong, but 11 or 12 gold medalists in different sports, and 8 world record holders. So they accomplished a feat that no one had accomplished up until that time. And so what Charles taught me was how to improve speed regardless of the sport. There are basic principles, and that's where a lot of the GPP comes in. But there's a lot of principles to improve speed. So he said, hey, as a strength coach, David, you really help your athletes make most of their money in 0 to 10. Well, 0 to 10 yards. So how fast then can they accelerate, decelerate, overcome inertia, and produce force very, very quickly? And this, almost all of it is developed in the weight room and with strength training. And how can you improve relative strength? So relative strength is strength for your body weight. And so that's what he taught me, is he taught me how to improve speed. And that's really the foundation of everything we do. Is we train a lot of team sport athletes. That's mostly, if they play soccer or football or hockey. So they're really in team sport athletes, you can improve success by how quickly your team can get to the ball, how many 50-50s you can win, how you can control the opponent, and how fast you can, accelerate, decelerate, and produce force on contact. So that's basically, our whole methodology is improving speed and improving an athlete's ability to strike when they get there. So yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely a legend. Extremely lucky you were to train under that guy, man.
Yeah, he mentored me. I started working at his gym. So basically, and then I paid him for consulting. So I had him for about 9-10 years. Is someone who really helped me out a lot. So
yeah, that's awesome. Like I was saying, I think our relationship is unique in the sense of there's never been, like we were saying, that underlying fear of you're gonna snake my clients, I'm gonna snake your clients or anything like that. And I think it's very rare that two owners of a business or two coaches can work together in tandem. And don't get it twisted, folks. I'm sending my athletes to him. He sends his coaches to me. Is kind of the exchange, so they can improve their skill in the sport if they want to do it. But then also for their coaching capabilities, we'll help them learn the movements and stuff. But we at 4-Star, we've sent multiple athletes over to MECA when we have something that is sport specific and athlete specific that we want them to work on, that either we just don't have the means to do it, or I know they're going to do a much better job in paying attention to that specific thing. So a good example is things like imbalances. I, for one, know that I am not an expert in managing imbalances and making those corrective movements in programming. And also just flat out paying attention to the nitty-gritty details of those isolated movements and all the stuff that is Dave and his crew's bread and butter. They're very good at it. They sit there and literally stare at you, making sure every small part of your body is doing it right. And I just, it's not my bread and butter. It's not what I do well. I like looking at the barbell lifts and all that type of stuff. No different than a football coach does it watching basketball. It's just, there's different things. But I know that I can send my athlete over there and A, they're going to get great hands-on experience. B, they're going to actually understand what they're working on versus just running the rat race with an athlete when they have some sort of imbalance or a weakness or an injury is so frustrating if you've ever had to do that with an athlete, because you're at the gym trying to figure it out with them. And this is where I'm not necessarily bashing on CrossFit, but I was a CrossFit coach for a while, many years, and we get in this habit as coaches, and Dave, I'm sure you've seen it, or even had to talk to employees since you had 50 employees. You said 50?
Yeah.
That's awful, by the way. You've never told me it was 50, all right? That's awful, and I never want to do that in my life. But coaches, they get very amped up and want to help. And usually if you're a coach, you're by nature a person that is going to be helpful. Well, unfortunately, you start to put on maybe too many hats that you're only maybe 10% versed on. And you become kind of a jack of all nothing, master of none. And, I think that happens in the Olympic weightlifting world is coaches that are really good or well-versed Olympic weightlifting coaches that now I'm a rehab coach. Now I'm a chiropractor. Now I'm a massage therapist. It's like, we should probably take the people to experts, just like if we were in an Olympic training hall in, I don't know, fucking 1980 Yugoslavia, or down in Colombia in an actual training hall, or in China, where we're always imitating these and talking. I'm going to get on a rant here, but we're talking about these like elite level facilities and teams that we're not doing the shit that they do. And I find that very ironic. And that's where like I draw the line in the sand. I'm like, all right, if I'm going to say I'm going to do the shit like the elites do, I'm going to take my athletes that want to go to that level and send them to the same way it would be done. And there's like a good example of this, if you guys want to see a good example of this, is All Things Gym did a video where they went to Team Italy. And Dave, I don't know if you ever watched like the All Things Gym
Oh, yeah.
video. Like,
absolutely.
They went and spent a week with the Italian team before they went to I think it was Worlds. But in that video, they're talking about the coaching staff, and the coaching staff is very small. It's like 5 people, but then they have 3 or 4 physios that are on the staff. And the Olympic lifting coaches only touch the Olympic lifting. That's all they do. The head coach writes it and manages. The other coaches critique, manage time, stuff like that. And then after that, all the athletes, they go to the specialist that do all the GPP, and like training's not done with their lifts. They go get the shit kicked out of them on the specialty movements. Like if so-and-so needs more leg isolation movement because the coach identifies they're weak here, or so-and-so has a weak back and they can't maintain posture, they work with the physios on that. And that's one of those things where I've always tried to integrate with you guys, with our athletes that can do it. And or extreme cases like where we had like with a couple of my athletes that are like this puberty, post-pubescent, pushing large loads, but their body's not ready for it, so we try to strengthen them. And there's never been any sort of uncomfortableness where it's like, I don't want them to steal my athlete, stuff like that. There's always been like a really easy, comfortable conversation around that. And I just wish more gyms could work cohesively with that type of stuff.
Yeah, the reason is I think you have a lot of athletes that you're working with, and I have a lot of athletes that we're working with too. So we're not really worried. It's like we're busy. We're a bit too busy, and so you're just trying to do what's best for your coach or your athlete, and you just want them to be successful more than you need to make an extra dollar, or you need to fill your ego or anything like that. So I think it would be wise for a lot of people. I've always had that mindset. If I can't do it best, if I can't do the job the best way, I think they should go see somebody else. And that's if any athlete, I don't want them to see me if they can go get better training from somewhere else, because they could short circuit their career. And I don't want that. Like, I really want my athletes to do well. I really care about them a lot as people, and I want them to be successful. So I think you have the same mindset as well. But yeah.
Like I've literally sent athletes like across the country to like back specialists and shit like that, because I'm like, I don't have that person for you here in Michigan, but if you are willing to buy a plane ticket, I'll send you the best person I can.
Yeah.
Just what I'm going to do for them. With your guys' facility, so let's kind of beat down like what is the message at MECA, because I think it's important. I also think it's rare. I don't think a facility like you guys exists very frequently in a lot of areas. Like there's a lot of places that say they do like personal training, right? You guys do what I actually refer when somebody's like, well, what's different about MECA? I say, well, they do isolated training. They do one-on-one with a coach where they're actually isolating you and then taking your body and isolating what it actually needs. Not just running you through and renting a friend to talk to.
Yep.
The good old rent a friend personal training plan of Lifetime Fitness. You guys actually dig into, hey, this is what you need based off this assessment we do, and I'll let you go into that. Right when an athlete, whether they're elite or beginner, come into the gym. And then from there on, you guys have a plan and a program, and it's structured, and it is worked on consistently, and there's tiers and what you guys are trying to progress on. I don't know why I said that so weird. But that you can see the progress continue on. And then at the end of it, there's like clear and concise checks in the boxes of this actually got done. Versus I feel like a lot of personal training facilities are just kind of like willy-nilly, like, all right, rattle the ball and grab the accessories for the day and throw the shit at the wall and see if it sticks. And that's how I feel like unfortunately, I feel like even in my world, man, a lot of people pick accessories because they just feel like they have to add accessories.
Sure.
To the point, to end that thought, I've actually had an athlete be like, it was one of our newer athletes we picked up from another club, and they're like, so you didn't give me any accessories? I'm like, yeah. They're like, but don't I need accessories? I'm like, maybe, like eventually.
Yeah.
Like,
sure.
but we always do accessories at the end. I'm like, okay, but not right now. They were like thrown off because I wasn't just giving them some random fucking movement to do at the end, like go do push-ups, because I felt like it was very thrown off. So please break it down. Like, how does it happen over at MECA?
Yeah, for sure. So, if you look at like athletes in their sport, every sport has specific qualities that sport needs. So a basic premise is the shorter the duration or the shorter distance the sport, the stronger the athlete needs to be. That's something people don't understand. So in a sport the sport where you need to be the strongest in is probably powerlifting. Then the sport where you need the next, in the iteration and the continuum is Olympic weightlifting, because those are dedicated on strength, and then the next one's strength and speed, power, right? So, but like in a sport like 1,600 meters for like a mile run, for example, you have to have some strength, but you don't need to be as strong as a 100-meter sprinter. Okay, a 100-meter sprinter, you have to be very strong. Where a 1,600 meter, what you're looking at is you're really looking at improving stride length and the amortization phase, so the stance phase. So when that foot touches the ground, there's no there's no lag. Okay, there's a lot of propulsion off the ground. There's no valgus with the knee, so that's what you're really trying to train, that knee in the hamstring at the knee joint, for example. Where in so sports where you have to accelerate, you're really looking at strengthening of the lower back. I mean, the big compound movements. So sorry, I'm getting off on a little tangent, but
I love it, man. No. I love it because this is all this shit like we look at as coaches, and most people, they're just like, use my legs. It's like, no, there's so much more we're looking at when it comes to use your legs.
And then so like when you're looking at a sport like Olympic weightlifting, right? There's not change of direction. The motor patterns are pre-rehearsed. Okay, so you don't need as wide of an exercise variation. You can actually get away with developing somebody getting someone to the top with probably 6 exercises, right?
It happens all the time.
It happens all the time, right? Well, in a sport like American football, for example, where you have to change direction, you need a lot of variation to take into account the different movement patterns. Yep. So, for example, defensive linemen, okay, they need less movements than a defensive back, because the defensive back is going to backpedal, they're going to open their hips, they're going to break on the ball, they're going to change direction, they have to react. A defensive lineman, 90% of the time, is they're sprinting 3 yards upfield as hard as they can, trying to smash someone with their head and get off a block, and then maybe get to the ball, right? It's very different. So just even in a sport, the different positions matter quite a bit.
Absolutely.
So that's something.
I like that you said that, though. Not to cut you off. I like that you said that because we just had one of my old professors a couple episodes ago. He's motor development professor, and we went over neurological movement, stuff like that. But at the end, I had him stack a bunch of sports on what is the hardest based on like all the science and rhetoric.
Yeah.
And it was funny because a lot of the weightlifters at the gym the next day that had listened to it, they were just like, and I always joke around in the gym. I'm kind of like passive and a smartass, as I'm sure you've known.
Yeah.
I sit there and I tell my athletes, I'm like, this shit's not hard, guys. You make it hard. You're making weightlifting really hard. It's not an actual hard sport. And they're like, okay, it's not hard. I'm like, no, it's really, by all definition, it's not a hard fucking sport. So you say that, and then like when Cologne was talking, like by definition, it's actually one of the easier sports when it comes to like motor recruitment patterns and stuff like that. And what you're saying, I was just like, I'm going to piss off more people now. And so, again, continues to be
Yeah. So the motor patterns are pre-rehearsed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you know what you're going to do. Whereas in like a sport like soccer, it's very reactive. A sport like basketball, it's very reactive,
Yep.
right? There's certain like shot, you'll rehearse that movement pattern over and over and over again, but it'll be from different angles, off of different dribbles, off of different like sets. So it's so anyway, there is advantages and disadvantages, but that's a basic premise that most strength coaches don't understand is the more movements an athlete does, the more variation. The exercise selection needs to be wider to take into account for that, because now you have to look at the knee, the ankle, the hips, shoulders, et cetera, et cetera. So and then and so what we do is like a basic premise is you're only as strong as your weakest link, and that's where structural balance comes in. Is bringing balance to all the tissues, in the body. So what we do is when an athlete comes in, we give them an assessment, an upper body assessment, a lower body assessment. For some of our advanced athletes, we do a neurological dominance assessment. So how does their brain, work when they train? What stimulates their brain? And then we do something called metabolic analytics, where we look at their body fat and look at it's an assertion of their hormonal profile. So we bring this all together, and then we develop a program based off of that. So everywhere from like nutrition, we have something called the 5 pillars, which are basically 5 basic principles that you need to do outside of the gym to live a healthy lifestyle. I think if I could give your like the Olympic lifters one tip, well, 2 tips, but
Right.
number one is before they do Olympic weightlifting, they do a little like a dynamic warm up. I think that would help a lot. A lot of the guys, they don't want to do it. They just go. I see it like sometimes. I haven't been to your gym in a bit, but like other gyms I've been to, they're just like, all right, we're gonna foam roll, and that's not the thing that I would do. But I would, and then we're gonna just start heaving weight. Okay, so do a dynamic warm up, and then after they're done training, you really should do static stretching for 15 to 20 minutes. In static stretching, when you obviously improve your flexibility, you lower neural inhibition, you recover faster, and you lower cortisol. So this cortisol is a stress hormone from training, and like that is like the biggest thing I see with like athletes who do Olympic weightlifting right now is in America versus professionally, and we have a lot of amateurs, right? Is they want to be good in it, but they don't take the recovery seriously. And the funny thing is like they actually have to take
or I'll just loop it for like 7 minutes.
Yeah. It's not the programming. It's like they don't retake. It's not the training. And yeah, they're not as if you're an amateur, you're not as good as professional. I'm an amateur basketball player in Dad's League. I play Dad's League basketball, right? Like I'm not a professional, right? But I do actually take my recovery seriously, so I can play. I want my knees to feel good. I want to be quick. I want to be explosive on the court as I can at 38 years old, right? With the kids, But I see so many 19, 20, 21-year-olds that have actually a lot of potential. And they're training hard and they make good progress for a year or 2 years, and they stop making progress because of injuries or pain. But really the injuries or pain were because they weren't properly warmed up. So they're going into lifts. They weren't neurologically in tune, ready to go. They didn't have enough lubrication in the joints. There was too much muscle stiffness. The nervous system wasn't primed, right? And that's like 10 minutes before you train. And you think about it, you'll have kids that will drive a half hour to the gym. They'll get on Instagram for 15 minutes instead of just dial in. I don't allow phones.
No,
I don't allow
a whole podcast about it.
Yeah. I don't allow phones in the gym when people are training. It's awful. It's disrespectful. It's disrespectful to the integrity of you. It's like the gym should be a sacred place where an athlete comes in and it's all about work. And you have your whole life to do Instagram or whatever outside of it, but you want to make your training is what you get to put into yourself and what your potential is. And you're disrespectful to yourself if you have a cell phone on in between your sets. And it takes your mind away from like what you have to do. And one of the things that athletes, especially young athletes, do is they're too distracted. And people, when you're distracted, you have anxiety. And when you have anxiety, you lower your potential because now you're thinking of outside things. Whenever you come into the gym, it has to be a special place. It has to be a place where you get better. There's no distractions outside. and you have to believe in yourself a lot, and you have to respect yourself. It's
Yeah, I
about
love
self. Yeah,
I love that.
it's about self-respect, about what you're doing for yourself when you come in to train. And there's a difference between exercising and training. And when you come into the gym with us, you have to train. In training, you're getting better, and you're not going to be average. You will get better here because it's focused. So, being serious, having that routine when you go in, I think is very important. It's very, very important.
For
And
sure.
then doing static stretching, you take, you know, you start the session with intent, and you end the session with intent. You put it in, I got better, and you get. And the thing is like there's no bad workouts when you do a dynamic warm up, because now you got your body moving at least. All right, and there's no bad workouts when you stretch and you improve your flexibility. And those are two things you can control on the bookends of the workout.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's like the biggest thing I see Olympic weightlifters is Olympic weightlifting. It might not be it's a hard sport in terms of the trauma that goes on the tissue and the volume.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is like in America, they like, especially when you're in your 20s, you have a job that you're working to provide for yourself, right? Well, that's even more stress.
Yeah.
Okay, that comes into the gym that's going to short circuit your process, your progress, and everything's about making progress. Okay, and so if you're in the sport, your goal is to make progress. It's not to, especially if you're training in America and you're not sponsored yet, right? Your
Yeah.
goal is just to make progress. It's not to be on an Olympic podium, but it's to make yourself proud. In all of those things about taking this training session seriously, and whoever knows, you've trained a lot of junior like Olympians and in medalists and in senior, like I've seen some of the results. It's pretty amazing, and it's like in America, I'd love us to see more people win the Olympic.
Yeah.
I think you would too, right? And so I think it's just
Absolutely.
a little bit of a mindset that we have here that other countries take a little bit more seriously. So anyway,
Yeah, I think a part of that is because we're in such a rushed mentality here because of that, like you said, because we have jobs and all that type of stuff. Like,
yeah,
we're always in this rushed mentality, and it's one of the reasons why, like, 4-star, why like I went with the training hall times instead of class times. Like, I was like 5 to 8, come in and get it done. You have 3 hours. If you can't get your workout done somewhere in there, like, then just don't even come. As far
yeah,
as I'm concerned, so it should be a relaxed environment. It should reward you with the opportunity to have enough time to do a good warm up, to do a good cool down. And it is like pulling fucking alligator teeth to get these guys and girls to do an actual warm up and cool down. And it's like, yeah, but you want to lift 10% more, but what if I told you that spending 10 minutes on either of those could get you 10% more? And they're like, no. Like, they don't believe it. It's heresy, I'm saying. But
yeah.
I think it's because again, I'll use this term that I used on another podcast that I got from a friend. It's we live in the microwave generation. So because
Yeah.
they can't feel the effects of stretching and a dynamic warm up and how it helps them right then and there, they don't want to do it.
Mm.
Then that's what I kind of see, and the trend. It's like, yeah, well, I warmed up all last week and I still missed my 90%. It's not what we're going for here, guy, but sure, you can make that assessment of what we're doing here.
Yeah, I'm I'm a very religious person. I'm Catholic, and there's two things that we're taught as Catholics and Christians that we're supposed to do, and it goes back to training. There's two things that we're here to develop our intellect and our will, and so the intellect is like to know what the right thing to do is, and the
Mm-hmm.
will is to do the right thing immediately when you're supposed to do it. Those are the two things that whole like Christianity is really like focused on in terms of that, and it doesn't just happen overnight. But that's the thing with athletes is like that's why they hire you as a coach, and then they have to do it. And it's like you can tell them, and I think you can tell them, but they still have to do it. People have to be responsible for their own success, and that's what makes you proud.
Yeah.
And in when you do the right thing when you're supposed to do it, okay, that's something that you can be proud of regardless of the outcome. And that's more important than the outcome, is knowing what to do. Right? That's why they hire us. And then they have to do it. I've never done one rep for one of my athletes.
Exactly.
They've helped the guy on a chin-up
Exactly,
before,
man.
right? But they're responsible for their own success. So a lot of the athletes that I train, they make millions and millions of dollars. I don't get any of their money. That's their money. If you're a football player, what they're doing is, on average, hopefully they train with me longer so I can help them, with their health. But if you're a football player, you can make a lot of money very quickly. But your life expectancy is 51. So you trade 30 years, basically, is what you do. So they deserve that money that they're getting, right? Obviously, they're getting paid it. But it's like people have to be responsible for their own success. It can't be just on the coach. The coach is just a guide, and the athlete has to be responsible for their own success.
Yeah, I always say it's 51-49. 51-49. It's I can do everything I can, but 51% of it's gonna always be on the athlete.
Yeah,
they lift the bar at the end. It's not me.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. So athletes come into your facility, they work with you guys, they do the assessment, and then what are we looking at next? How's the programming built out? What are we looking at for movements?
So basically, the first thing we do is we look at, depending on the sport, it will vary, but we're looking at weak links in the athlete's chain. So we look at the ankle joint, the knee joint, the hip joint, the shoulder joint, and so in the first two phases are really to bring those weak links up. Sometimes it takes three. Sometimes you can get a lot done in one, depending on. Sometimes it takes longer. But basically, what you're doing is you're isolating these weak points in the athlete's system. And what that does is it makes the whole system or the whole chain stronger, more resilient. The biggest thing that athletes, is pain, is when you perceive pain, it lowers your output, lowers your power output quite a bit. And so when you have athletes training through pain, sometimes it happens. You want to overreach. Sometimes that's fine. Okay, but there's always has to be a recovery point. But when an athlete, and that happens in football, that happens in sport. Everybody in football, I train a lot of NFL players, and everybody feels great going into week 1, and nobody feels great going into week 9. Nobody, right?
I can imagine.
Right. It's a brutal sport. It's the same thing with when you're throwing a barbell over your head, right? The same thing's happening. But what happens is there's certain points where you can accept pain, but in your development, in certain points of your development, you want to limit that pain threshold, and you want to bring the body into structural balance and decrease that stress on the joints and on the brain. So what happens is we try to basically improve structural integrity through every joint. Then we look at what's weak. So it usually takes us about 4 to 8 weeks to get an athlete to the point that we like him. We use basic functional lifts. We have different lifts like split squats. We'll look at for example, the knee joint in a deep knee bend. We're looking at a split squat, and we're looking at a certain ratio for strength for their body weight to say, yeah, that's good. And then a split squat will improve. And then looking at the knee joint like a step up pattern. The step up pattern has to be a certain strength for their body weight. Once the athlete hits these norms, we have norms for every single joint in the body. Then we can progress them we would call it more complex exercises, which would be barbell exercises for us. And so the first phase is more isolation. Then we start integrating the whole chain. So you move from a split squat or a step up to a front squat or a back squat. But they have to hit those norms before they get there. And then we know that the athlete is strong enough and flexible enough to squat with perfect mobility or good mobility. And they also have to hit flexibility norms too. We're not going to squat somebody because in your sport you have to squat somebody, but that's because that's what you have to do. You have to drive up the squat to improve the snatch and the clean and jerk. You have to do it. But in our sport, we can make an athlete faster without squatting them. Now, a squat is probably the best. If I could pick one exercise, it would be a squat or a deadlift. Maybe a full clean, because you have to deadlift the bar fast, catch it, and then stand up with it. You have to front squat it up, right? So for athletic development, I don't think there's a better lift than a full clean. You know,
Yep.
you learn to accelerate the bar from a dead stop. You have to have the motor skills to catch the bar, and then you have to have the eccentric strength to ride it down.
I'm
And
actually did a poll. I did a poll on my Instagram. That reminds me. I have to look at the results of that.
yeah,
I
yeah,
did a poll on the Instagram what everyone's favorite lift was, and out of like 42 people or 48 people or whatever, I'm not that popular. Like clean got like no love. It was like
for sure.
11%. Nobody liked it.
This,
I was like,
you,
Jesus.
do you know why that is, Matt? It's
Probably
because
because it's
hard.
boring.
It's hard.
I think it's actually the opposite. I think people get off on the intricacies of the snatch and the jerk,
Yeah,
and the clean. They think they can just get away with it, goombaing it,
yeah,
because they're not at like that higher level. We're like, no, you have to do this thing right if you want to move to like that next echelon
yeah,
of the clean.
yeah.
So that's why I think. But that's my personal opinion. But yeah, I
Yeah,
thought that.
yeah. So that's like, so that's what we do, and then we try to drive up the compound lifts, and then there's a certain strength to weight ratio that we use in those compound lifts, and once they hit they're the ratios that we like, then we will start looking at more like Olympic weightlifting. So clean, snatch, jerk. We'll do different pull variations. Um, we'll look at sprinting and stuff like that. So that moves us, more to something we would call the strength speed continuum, and really looking at what physical qualities the athlete needs. Do they need more strength? Do they need more speed? Do they need more strength speed, which would be or speed strength? So those would be the different things that we look at when we're training athletes. That's basically the whole system.
Yeah.
And then we use basically block periodization. It's a Russian system, but adapted to what we use. So block periodization, where we're focusing on one or two specific qualities per block, and we found that gets the most results for us in the short time that we have our athletes. So for a lot of the football players that we train, they need to put on muscle mass. So that's our goal, is to put on functional muscle mass that's usable, that they can move quickly. We're improving joint integrity because the joints get chewed up during the season. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's I always thought it was interesting you guys doing the like for example, like you were saying, the step ups with the weight ratio, stuff like that. You see people hand out lunges and step ups and all that stuff, and I swear to God, they're just throwing out random fucking numbers. And it's like, yes, the lunge is good for an athlete to do. Like the weighted step up is good for an athlete to do, but like again, like I was saying in the beginning, I think a lot of times people are just throwing accessories out there to do them without any rhyme or reason, or they'll give lunges and then like the athlete won't do lunges for like another 3 or 4 weeks. And it's like, all right, you're not really doing anything. Like no progress. Like sure, your athlete practiced a movement, but like without repetition and consistency, there's no learned skill development. So like doing push-ups, then lunges, then pull-ups, and then them not doing any of those movements again for 4 weeks is, you're really just not doing shit. They're just exercising. Now, again, exercise is great. It's not. It's better than no exercise.
It's not training.
Yeah, it's not exactly. It's not training, because training is towards a specific goal.
Yeah. I think that everything should be tailored toward a specific goal, and I think people need to use actually the least amount of exercise as possible to make the most progress, because there's every stimulus that you put into the athlete's body, they have to recover from. And that's what people don't realize, is like you can't just throw stuff at a wall. You have to be very precise with what you give your athlete. And then you're looking at optimal recovery. So if I have an athlete that's not making progress, the first thing I do is lower the volume.
Yep.
Because that's the first thing I do, is you're not recovering. So it's like I cannot give you more work because you're not making progress on what we're giving you. So we have to lower the volume. I usually lower it by about 30 to 35%. If that doesn't work, then you have to use hard deload weeks. So 2 weeks on, 1 week off, where we deload the volume by 80%, which is so they come into the gym, they train for 15 minutes and they leave.
Yeah, it's heavy. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, so.
I like that you said that though. Not to stop your train of thought, but like the fact that you said like you start and then you back off is I'm by nature a volume coach, and like for Olympic weightlifting, and that's how I was
Yeah.
educated formally by my coaches and my mentors. I mean, it's just like the nature of the sport. You got to do lots of repetition to not only neurologically memorize the movement, but practice it and build muscle. But like also volume training, you have to start with volume. And then because then you can actually decide, okay, I can back off or move forward. Versus I feel like a lot of times, like coaches in weightlifting specifically, they will give just enough. And then it's like they're just kind of always reaching versus like starting like dunking into volume and then being like, all right, I just need to back off here or I can go forward. It's always like this never ending reaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been referred to as a volume coach. And I'm okay with saying that. I've trained Tracy and Richard to be volume coaches and stuff like that. And anyone who's trained under me. Because you train for the standard and you program for the standard you want to achieve.
Yep.
And then you back off from there. You don't start at the beginning and then like crawl forward. I always like that.
Yeah. So I put athletes into 3 buckets, and this is what I learned from Charles Poliquin. Actually, is there's athletes that are volume responders, there's athletes that are intensity responders, and there's athletes that respond well to variation.
Bingo.
And so the volume responders do well on high volume programs and make great progress. And athletes that respond well to intensity, they'll burn out on a volume, but vice versa. And then there's athletes that need more variation and need more deloading. Okay, you need more change of exercise. So that actually has to do with that neurological assessment test that I was talking about that we use. I'm a very like the athletes that I work with tend to be very they play professional football, so they're large. So that being 260 to 300 pounds, that takes a lot on the nervous system. They have a high output, right? So that takes a lot on the nerve. So they're more intensity responders, just due to the nature of their sport. But then there's some guys that I can drive volume and it works very, very well. And then there's some guys where they would actually regress during the off season. They would get worse, and I would burn out their nervous system. So I'm an intensity responder, and so like I do really, really well with shorter workouts. A shorter workout would be like 45 to 55 minutes, fast velocity, going for it, but then making sure I recover. Where there's some of my friends, they 10 sets of 10, no problem. They get a huge pump. They love it. Yep. Like usually if an athlete's enjoying the training to a degree, it could be hard, but they're enjoying it. They're stimulated. They're very motivated. They're doing good training for them. And then when you find like, they're keeling over, their eyes are glazed, you're like, oh man, like, you know what I mean? And then sometimes you want that. Sometimes you want to go. Sometimes it's like, hey, we need to overreach right now, and that's okay. I'll tell them going in, this is going to be bad, but you need to do it. I'm going to drive you hard. You're going to hate me right now, but we're going to come out of this really, really good. We're going to deload at the right time, and it's going to be okay. And that works really well too.
Yeah, I think that's dangerous when people don't know what they are and they have a preconceived notion of what they are.
Sure.
So like, I'm not going to say any names, but if the person listens, they'll know who they are. They love working out, and like that's their thing, and they want to work out and work out and work out. And
that's a volume. Yeah, that's a total volume.
But they are not at the point in their life where like that is actually ROI positive. And you get more out of them when you have them go and do 7 reps, 8 reps at singles for snatches 70%, 80, 75, 80, 85, 85, 85, 90, 90, 90. So they do 7, 8 reps. They do the same thing for clean and jerk. Awesome. You did great. You nailed all your high percents. That's what we needed. We're heading to a meet. And they get pissed. They're like, I didn't work out. It's like, yeah, you did. You did
It's
exactly the task you
actually
needed to do. And they're like, that
no,
didn't work out.
that's great stimulus because most of training is motor learning,
Yeah.
is learning the motor patterns. And so, but when you miss a lift, okay, when you miss a lift because of poor technique, because you weren't able to handle that technique for whatever reason, it could be a different lift than Olympic weightlifting. It could be a bench press, right? But you short circuit your motor learning. And when you miss a lift, you raise cortisol, you raise stress, and you lower your dopamine and your drive. So you want, like as a coach, that's why you like ramp like that exactly because you actually are raising success. You're raising
Yep.
dopamine, and you're like, hey, I'm getting every one of these lifts. I'm feeling good, and you can play like you can, and it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible to be perfect with technique. I mean, especially like when you're going into the heavier percents. That's why successful lifts at lower intensity percentages are so vital. It's great training, and you're building that training effect through motor learning. Motor learning, in my opinion, is just about everything.
All right.
And it's like, especially in relative strength sports, which Olympic lifting is a relative strength sport, unless you're the heavyweight, where it's like how strong you are for your body weight.
Yeah.
Absolute strength, right, is like just how much you can lift regardless of your body weight. But that's something that athletes don't understand that we as coaches can really educate them and say it's like, hey, like, hitting 5 singles at 85% is great training. It's
Yep.
great training. And then maybe you back off to your next series and you can kind of, with a lower complexity exercise like squats, and you can go, 5x5 at 85%, which is, that's good work.
That's good.
But you're getting great training. You're putting money in the bank. And like, just imagine if he stretched after his workout.
Just imagine. You didn't say he, by the way.
No. But I just,
anyone. There's an open.
yeah. But like,
Um,
but then you improve everything. You improved. I love training so much, and I love when it's
yeah.
perfect. It's like you're hydrated when you come into the gym. You warm up properly. You're turned on neurologically. There's no phone in the gym, so you're not going to be distracted. You don't disrespect yourself. You train
Yeah.
hard for an hour and a half, whatever it is. You finish the workout. You get a protein shake, and you stretch. You lower cortisol. It's all a win, no matter what happened. You have to do that every time. That's how you become really successful. And you
Yeah.
don't become successful if you don't have that mentality to do the basic things. And I think going into the gym in doing those things at the front end and the back end is just basic. It's not complex overachieving. It's like what you should be doing every time.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. Lots of good content, lots of good tips, man. You guys run an awesome show over there. Segueing into excellent exercises for our body, I wanted to do our end game as we always do on the show. So with the vast history of sports training you have, our end game, basically I wanted to talk to you on a list of topics that you thought would be, sport practical, whether you thought they were practical or not. These are just a myriad of things we see in the fitness world. You can give your short answer. I was going to get all crazy with some YouTube videos and stuff, but it wasn't integrating very nicely.
Okay.
But we'll get some feedback in the next couple minutes on whether you think they're good, bad, ugly. Nothing too advanced. So I've went through many real world verified and practical application of strength in sport and wanted your professional opinion on them. So the first one, Rickson Gracie, if you know who Gracie is from the BJJ world, he was known to apparently walk around the city/village with a like bungee cord type contraption around his head, pulling a weight around him to strengthen his neck and head muscles for his BJJ stuff. And I mean, I'm not going to argue with one of the original Gracie brothers because they were badasses, but what's your thought about that being in the S&C world for as long as you have? And all the head devices we see now. Because obviously, like, we know it helps with concussions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But how much of this stuff is...
training your neck is a really good thing. I don't know if that's real or not. But I wouldn't... Like, what happens if someone stepped on the rope? Would he fall? Like, fall down.
I think this is going on like the 40s, 50s is when he was around.
Oh,
If
yeah, I
it's a Ray
mean,
Gracie, I'm thinking of.
training your neck is like a really good thing. I would have a hard time watching someone walk in the street, with people walking around. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I have no idea.
I just
Probably not.
imagine like a tire tied to like a bungee cord around a neck.
Yeah, I mean, probably not. There's probably better ways to do neck training. How's that?
Um, so when it comes to rehab, there's a bunch of different modalities around. One of the ones I know you personally have seen and I've seen come and go in its popularity here and there is cryotherapy. Many athletes like LeBron James, Ronaldo, they're big fans of it and swear by it. Your opinions?
I've used cryotherapy. I think it's okay. I know some people who swear by it. I actually like cold tub better than cryotherapy.
Ice bath
Um,
for the win.
yeah, but I've not. It's okay. It's not bad. I think a cold tub is better though. So
Yeah. Pilates, the devil's workout, man. Have you ever done Pilates, Dave?
I don't think
Or have you
so.
hidden? Have you hidden from it?
No, I've never done it. Some
Okay.
people, yeah. Some
By
people
far
really
one of the
enjoy
worst classes I've ever done.
it. Yeah.
Literally, I had to in college
Okay.
as like part of one of the classes, and we had to like go explore different fitness modalities. And I took a Pilates class, and I mean, I used to get like smoked in the army and just army talk for like just getting your ass handed to you exercisally when
Yeah.
you misbehaved or did something wrong. And the reformer might be the worst piece of death in a fitness studio that could exist. And that mean lady at the front. And you're like a big male muscle guy in
Right.
this class with these like 55-year-old Pilates women just destroying you at any movement that's going on. And man, I joke around all the time like I'm gonna take my staff there and just like make a vlog out of it of just like 4-star goes to Pilates and just
Yeah.
videotape them getting their asses handed to them because it's so hard. Wow, what's your opinion on Pilates?
Some people, do really like it. I've personally never done it before. I know some instructors. They're really good people. Trying to help out. Um, I really don't have like too much of an opinion because I don't have personal experience. I know some people who really like it a lot, and some people who don't. So,
Do you want to do a tandem MECA and 4-star go to Pilates session and watch? And me and
I
you could
think
just
I might have a lot of people walk out on me as they might quit. Yeah.
Okay, balance. Bosu and balance, man. Balance is required in all degrees of all sports and athletics, but where do we draw the line? When is it ridiculous? We've seen the slack bands, we've seen all different variations of Bosu balls, we've
Yeah.
seen the balance boards, the balance surfboards, the balance boogie boards, all the every different variation to try to sell a buck on Amazon. Where do we draw the line? Because I think balance is extremely important, especially in my sport,
Yeah.
but obviously in sporting too.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of balance training. Just for the simple, fact is like, when was the last time you had to power clean during an earthquake? Um,
Yeah, no, it's fair.
so the ground is stable. You move over the ground, so it's a different neurological input to the brain. So it does no training on an unstable surface, unless it's like low level rehab, is pretty useless.
Yeah.
Unless there are some things for it. So when you want to stimulate like your fixators and stabilizers in like GPP, it can be helpful, but it's really to turn on more fibers in a certain way, and but like that goes back to like motor learning, is that your balance is going to be in relation to the stimulus that it's presented to. So if you want to get better at balancing on a Bosu ball, go balance on a Bosu ball, but it's not going to carry over. There's not much to carry over to anything else. So I think most balance training is a complete waste of time. It can be useful when people are coming back from like bad injury and they're trying to get more fibers to turn on. It's called when you put someone on an unstable surface. You can turn on something called the survival fibers and recruit those, but it's overdone, and it has like no place in like after you get to a certain point, it's pretty useless. So,
gotcha. Yeah, my only thing I do in the gym that's balance wise, and anyone that's ever worked with me at the gym has seen it, is the old 2x4. And I will have my athletes understand very quickly that it's even weight distribution in their feet, not in the toes, not in the heels, by having them stand on a 2x4 and do movements.
So with balance training, like it's specific. So like if you're in wrestling and you need a lot of balance in wrestling, right?
Yep.
And a lot of coordination. I mean, you need a lot of balance in gymnastics, but those are two different skills that wouldn't even translate to each other, because going like on a balance beam is completely different than balancing force and like being able to absorb and apply force, et cetera, et cetera. So with balance training, it's very specific to what the stimulus is being presented to the athlete.
Yep. All right. O2 masks. Here we go. The favorite fad of 2016, I'd say. I think it was 2016, 2014 years. Wearing O2 mask to max to mock oxygen deprivation while exercising. I know my personal experience. Okay, I had videos of me online when we were in the Army. We would wear the gas mask, and holy shit, it was miserable. And one of the worst training paradoxes we'd ever decided to do was wear those for like twice a week, probably, for our CrossFit workouts we were doing or on road marches. And we knew, I mean, they did studies. It wasn't actually deprivating any oxygen to you. It was restricting the airflow effect, which basically makes you just panic. And we were doing it purposely for the fact to make us have to regulate our breathing.
Yeah.
And that, in the effect, made us better. And we would say it helped us regulate our breathing when it came to our running and our ruck marches and our exercising. There was a lot less panic breathing. And I was a terrible runner. And I definitely think that this helped me, like wearing the gas mask, kind of like learn how to control my breath. Because you'll just die in a gas mask doing that. But and I'm sure you remember seeing it. Everyone had those black, like, Summit, Mountain, whatever masks in like Lifetime.
What's my opinion? Yeah, so I don't see a lot of people wearing the masks anymore. So it kind of gives you an idea of how effective it was. I mean, how long has barbells and dumbbells been around for? Over 100 years? And they're still the staples of developing athletic performance. So those are the staples. Everything else, most everything else is just a fad in terms of athletic development. So
I also think the last few years may have killed the branding and marketing appeal of that.
Yeah, there you go.
We won't say the word because it'll destroy the YouTube algorithm metrics, but the multi-piece sport specific training implemented into fitness regimens. This is the super fun. Seems to be like this paradox, and I'm going to try to describe it, where coaches that are strength and conditioning coaches but are not the sports coaches are trying to imitate the sport while doing strength and conditioning. So they are taking, for example, a band and crossing it across the shoulders of like a thrower and then having them move around the gym in like circles while restricting the band, or like stuff like that, where they're blending the two sports. They're trying to make the sport specific with the strength and conditioning element. Like, I feel like we should stay in two different lanes here.
It's a complete waste of time. There's something called training economy, and it's like an athlete only has so much time to adapt to the stimulus that's being provided. So what are you actually trying to get the athlete to adapt to? That's what training is about, is you provide a stimulus and you try to get the athlete to adapt to that. It's not happening. And what you actually do is you actually regress the athlete, because if it's a sport like you're trying to throw an implement, there's a certain skill, a certain velocity, and a certain feel.
Yeah.
All right. So if you look at like NBA players, right, they're not using a heavier ball to shoot because they know it's stupid. It has no carryover to improving their shot performance. Do you know what NBA players found to improve their shot performance? Did more than anything else? Sleeping more. Sleeping more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
actually so ironic. Okay, not this one, but I'm going to skip forward. What about resting? Like literally the last slide. What about just resting, Dave? Is just actually resting as much as possible for performance?
yeah,
That's
it's
a great thing to do.
Yeah, so the basic, like, this is how you improve in anything, like in terms of, is like there's a stimulus that's presented to the individual, okay, to the organism, okay. The individual has to process that stimulus, and they have to recover from that. And how well they recover from that stimulus is how well they'll adapt. And adaptation is really like what you're looking for, is like how fast can you adapt, and how well and how much can you adapt to the stimulus that's being provided. So if you don't sleep, if you don't rest, you limit your ability to adapt, and you have only a short window to adapt. So if you miss out on sleep, well, you've missed out on that window to adapt to that training stimulus, and you've short-circuited your potential for your entire career. That's why I'm like try to be a very dynamic about sleep and rest and recovery. So
I love it, man. People don't get it. They think it's just all about the grind.
Yeah, it's part of it. Yeah, you have
part
to.
of the time,
But yeah, so.
But all right, Dave, I appreciate, man. You guys run an awesome show over there. Those of you that are not from this area, here in Michigan, I definitely recommend finding a facility like MECA. It'll just do you well if you have athletes that you have interest in, or have athletes or maybe your own children that play sports and want something like this. Take a look at Dave's website, find a facility that's like this. It'll definitely pay out its dividends, I assure you. Dave, where can people find not only your business, but also find you on social media?
So business, mecastrong.com, MECA strong.com. And then, that's the same thing on Instagram. And then my full name, David Lawrence, SC, for strength coach, but David Lawrence SC on Instagram. So yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yep, Dave, learned a ton. Thank you. I'm sure the viewers and listeners will learn a ton. Just keep doing great work, man. It's been a blast being able to work with you, being able to trust sending athletes up to you to make sure they come back to us stronger and fitter and ready to rock.
Cool. Appreciate you. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Matt.
Thanks, man. Bye.